Hi, I'm Steve Adamko, founder and owner of Spectrum Interiors, established in 1982. What we do here is residential, commercial, custom furniture design, lighting design, and just about anything that you can think of. What we provide here is a look with an ambiance. And of course, ambiance is very important to us because it's part of that intangible feeling that it touches the mind, the will, the emotions, and the heart of the individual that we're dealing with. So we cover the whole state of Michigan and have a job that was completed down in St. Croix in the Caribbean. So geographics don't really bother us too much. What I want to focus on is the design seminars that we offer, and they range in time from an hour to 3 hours. And I want to take a little bit of time and focus on the 3-hour one. And the 12 topics or areas of interest that we cover, it really is focusing on the process of interior design so that people understand what it takes to do a design job and have it turn out really, really well, or actually hit the target that's established. The number one thing that we start out with is the dream, and it's really your dream. It's about what you want, what you need, maybe what you want that you don't think that you can have, but at this point we want to be very creative and open because you never know what might happen. We don't want to put any constraints on your imagination at this point. We want to kind of let it free will and see what we come up with. So it's all about you at this point, and of course it's all about you at every point of the design process, but we really want to focus on you because you're the pivot point of the whole design concept, because it's the environment that you're going to live and reside in, and it also forms the backdrop for you. That's number one. Number two is we're going to focus on the discovery journey. And really, it's kind of like a journey because most people have never really thoughtfully considered what it is they totally want to accomplish. Somebody might say, well, I want it to feel cozy and comfortable. Well, what does that mean to you? And how is that going to actually develop in a tangible way so that all the elements of that environment all add up to what it is that you wanted in the first place? That's important to go through that process, which incorporates a lot of questions, the right kind of questions, great answers, detailed answers, so that we can get the end result. It's a very critical step of discovery. It's kind of like what a lawyer would do in a sense. You want to find out the facts, the givens, the things that you have to deal with, the things that can change in an environment or a structure, what things are important to you, what things can't you live without, how do you live now? How do you want to live in the future? What kind of changes might be in the future? We want to be able to accommodate those. Then, number three would be your lifestyle statement. This functions kind of like a mission statement or a business statement. So we want to take the information that's been culled from talking about your dream and about what you want, and then all the things that came from the discovery process, and put them in a paragraph that talks about what it is we want to accomplish, the look, the ambiance, the feel, the emotions. We want to really define this in a very descriptive way so that we have a yardstick, so to speak, for measuring everything that happens from there on out to the end of the design process. It's very important that we get this mission statement because it eliminates a lot of the fluff and a lot of the things that you really don't need to take your time up with. You don't need to look at certain things, and there's a host of materials and furniture and lighting and things to go through, and most people would be totally overwhelmed if they were able to go through all the things that are totally available in the world today. That helps to alleviate a lot of the extraneous details that aren't necessary to the project, and quite frankly, it will eliminate a certain amount of stress to certain people, especially people who feel overwhelmed. So we want to create a very comfortable process where stress really isn't a part of that. Now, closely allied with that is the budget, or what I would call your vested interest, because you surely have a vested interest in the amount of money that you want to invest in a project. So the idea is that we don't want to spend your money, in a sense, just merely spend it. We want to invest it with a view towards a return on your investment. And that return can happen in a lot of different ways. It could be intellectually stimulating, emotionally satisfying, visually pleasing. We want to be able to factor in all these things and create this sense of completeness and that you feel totally satisfied with the end result. We want to make sure that we're being very honest about the budget, because there's no sense designing a room for $100,000 when you only have a budget for $15,000, or maybe less than that. It depends on the situation. sometimes with a lower budget, one has to be much more creative in order to get the essence of it. If I can tie it back with the dream and the things that were brought out with the discovery process, now you can see a little bit of how this ties together. So, if you focus on the ambiance or the essence of the design, then you know exactly where to compromise if one has to, or compromise temporarily where we can institute something later on as money becomes available. But it really helps the creative process immensely. Doesn't matter how much money is available, whether you just are kind of in a middle income situation or you're a multimillionaire, it really doesn't matter. Everybody should have a budget to work within, if at all possible. And we want to be truthful about that. We don't want to be pie in the sky, well, I can do this, or I didn't realize that was going to cost that much. Well, that's why all these processes and prior steps that I've just enunciated so far are so important to making that work correctly. And all these processes, all these steps are really tied in together. They're really tied in together just like the human body is tied together. One thing is connected to something else, either directly or indirectly, but it's all part of the whole process, the whole design. That brings us to the importance of a master plan. The master plans are important from this standpoint. Not everybody can do a design job in one fell swoop. A lot of people have to take 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 years and maybe sometimes 20 years to fully develop the concept. And it's important to have a concept. I saw a quote just recently where a clear picture of a fuzzy concept, it's just not going to work, is it? Master plans are important because they are the guiding principle. It forms the trajectory, so to speak, from point A to point B. We don't want to deviate. That's why all those prior steps are so important to defining the target so we can hit the target in the bullseye perfectly. Okay? Now, once you start to get that in place, then it's going to be revolving around certain things like backgrounds. How to become a gem in your own setting. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's just take a diamond ring, for example. You are the diamond. But how that diamond is set in a surrounding, there's all kinds of designs for rings, but certain settings are going to bring out the fullness of that diamond, the color, the clarity, the fire. So we want to make that important because, quite frankly, you're the one that's most important here. There's lots of backdrops and backgrounds, textures, colors, things of that nature that will really bring out the best in you. And we all know that certain people look good in certain colors. Well, they also look good or not by what is surrounding them. Because you may look from your eyes out, but other people are looking at you in the context of your environment. So it's important not only what you see, but how others see you in your environmental 3D stage setting, surround environment. There's things such as space planning, form and flow. Well, the space planning is incredibly important, especially if you're dealing with a new house or a new space or a new office or something of that nature. Other times you have an existing building or home that has a layout that maybe you can't change. In some cases, there are walls that can be removed or reallocated or whatever, or the space can be reconfigured to function a lot better. And really, if you take a floor plan, let's say a condo, for instance, and two condos have the same footprint, they look the same, they could be mirror images of each other, but how that interior space is configured is going to make one of those condos a winner for you and the other one not a winner for you. So it's very important that the floor plan, the way the walls and doors are allocated, work well for your lifestyle, how you flow through a space, whether you do entertaining or not. It's incredibly important. As a matter of fact, in the seminar, I show a room, same size, and change up the door and window openings, and that determines the traffic flow from different points into the room and through a room. And so it can either open up space for larger groups, or it can cut it up into small pieces that it's not worth hardly anything. And then sometimes you have to reconfigure and redirect the traffic flow with the furniture arrangement. But again, everything takes place within an architectural confine. So that is the foundation of a good room or a good environment. So we cannot overlook the importance of good, strong architecture in an environment. Okay, after that, we're talking about windows and dressing your windows. Now, windows are kind of a transitional element, so to speak. They function as architecture, and they function as other ways to add accessorization to a space in a big format, because it can be draperies, lambrequins, blinds, shades, all kinds of things that factor into what the ultimate ambiance is that you want to achieve. And sometimes you have to change the appearance of the proportion of the windows to better coincide with the room or what you're doing. So sometimes there's things you do that are what I call sleight of hand. You make a window look wider or taller than it actually is, and you do that with window treatments. And so that's an extremely creative aspect to look at with somewhat of an architectural eye, so that that money particularly is invested correctly, because one can spend a lot of money on window treatments. Also, lighting is another big topic that we discuss and help people realize that lighting is important for not only the look of the space, but all the emotion that you promote with it. And quite frankly, you can destroy a room with the flick of a switch. Pretty powerful, isn't it? So, many homes, they're designed, people move things in, but never has there been any consideration to how to light that space. Or many people have, placed fixtures or cans, as we call them, in places, and the lighting still doesn't work correct. Well, let's back it off and realize that it's the lamp or the light bulb that does the job. And with every lamp and light bulb, there's different what we call photometrics about it. There's beam spread, there's intensity, there's the color of the light, whether it's an A lamp, an incandescent, whether it's par 36, whether it's MR16. They all have different color temperatures. That's why materials will look different. You'll find it in many cases in a jewelry store. They might have low voltage lighting, or these MR16 little tiny bulbs that are mirror faceted, that are balanced throughout the color spectrum, because they want to make that diamond look phenomenal. And as light's put through a diamond, it separates into its respective color bands, which is where we get the rainbow from, and the color circle and all that. So that's very important. And also the direction of lighting, how it hits a piece of artwork, a sculpture, how it comes down on furniture, all is important, especially zoning lighting, so that you can enhance different concepts, different moods, different atmospheres at different times of the day. Very important to kind of plan that aspect in as well. Then we talk about coloring your world. We go into the whole aspect of color. You've got color, you've got pattern, you've got texture, and how those are all interrelated and how they function together. And there's a lot of things that go on with different color trends and things of that nature. But what we really want to concentrate on is strongly on the individual. And so color trends and fads, well, they come and go. So sometimes when people get caught up into that, it can be good to a certain point, but then everybody jumps on the same bandwagon, and then pretty soon everybody, you and your neighbor, have the same type of look because that's what's hot now. And that's not how, in my opinion, interior design should be approached, because there's a lot more to your environment than just that. So you are a unique individual, a unique person, and therefore it should be approached just as uniquely, just like a tailored suit, just like a special dress that is made just for you and no one else, or for a guy. A custom-made suit, measured and tailored for nobody but him. Okay? So that's how I look at things. I'm very individualistic about this. And does it take a little bit more time? Yes, it does. One could say, well, I'm just going to do this because that's a hot trend for now, and then everybody is so duplicatable that there's no personalization to that. You look at all the colors in the world, all the textures and things like that, there's no reason why you can't be unique, as each snowflake is unique. The other thing is textural orchestration. Texture is the greatest modifier of formality or informality. And so that's the one element that is so often overlooked and underutilized. Most people think of color and pattern. Well, that can be nice to a degree, but most people are tactile people. They like to feel and touch things. And the textural orchestration, or the variety of texture, orchestrated just right, brings a strength and a richness to even the most simplest interior. Even if it's a monochromatic color scheme, texture is incredibly important to deliver the end result. And so what we want to do is bring that involvement of people into it. I like to use an analogy sometimes for a newborn baby. Most of the time, you know, women will just hold the baby for a long, long time, and somebody else might want to say, oh, let me see him or her, and they reluctantly give up the baby. But watch closely. A lot of times, you know, women be rubbing the arm or the leg continuously, and do they ever stop and say, oh, I've had enough of that? Because the baby skin is so soft and just ultra silky, and even the smell of a baby. So these are all things that are important to connect with in your environment. That's part of what ambiance is all about, that intangible essence. After the texture orchestration, we talk about accessorizing. And here, the little things mean everything. And really, what woman would disagree with that? Little things mean a lot. A lot of times, we might be involved in doing furniture planning and furniture selection and all the architectural stuff that goes into it, as far as architectural backgrounds like designing custom moldings and things of that nature, or custom furniture. But at a certain point, many people think, well, I can't handle that part of it by myself, but I can do the accessorization by myself. Well, the accessorization phase is a mini version, so to speak, of the major element that you just finished up. And so the types of things that are selected, the colors, the textures, yes, you want to have personal interests with objects because they personalize a space. But we wanted to personalize that space from the very beginning all the way to the very end. It's important to look at that aspect and then how you position accessories. Sometimes they can not say anything, and then you adjust the positioning so they have a closer proximity to each other, but they come together like kind of like the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all, and they make a big impact, more than just that individual. So that's why backgrounds come into play again. And backgrounds could be a cocktail table, a side table. It could be marble, it could be wood, it could be your eye is looking down on those elements. Just like originally when I talked about the backgrounds were so important. Well, when you look at a space, there's a lot of furniture that you're seeing that the wall and the floor are both a backdrop in your line of vision. So it's important that the color and the texture and everything enhance the fabric on the sofa or the upholstery or the shapes of furniture, whether they be upholstered goods or case goods or art or sculptures or what have you. So this is very, very important. So a lot of times people will say, oh, I can handle that part of it. But the interesting thing of it is many times they've gotten to a certain altitude, like in an airplane, they've gotten to 30,000 feet, but then they say, okay, let me take over. So together we get up to that altitude, and then they say, oh, let me jump in the cockpit here, and let me jump in the pilot's seat, and I'll take over from here. Well, training has a certain amount to do with keeping everything stable and in flight at a certain altitude. So it's the same thing here, and I've seen many times where they say, well, I'm going to take over from here, and the whole concept just starts to go right downhill, like a plane just almost dropping out of the sky. Everything that was developed up to that point is starting to disintegrate to a certain degree. Okay, so it's better to have at least a collaborative effort on that. If not, let the designer handle that and help you through that so that you get the best aspect. And it's just like, it's no different than women selecting a nice, beautiful dress. It's cut, tailored correctly, it's got the right material, it flows, it hangs nice, it's just wonderful. It's like perfect by itself. Okay, well then it's kind of like, okay, now we're in, after that, it's the accessorization stage, right? Necklaces, earrings, bracelets, and there's where you got to be very careful, because you can really cause it to, the look to kind of fall off a little bit if you're not careful with the quality, the proportion, the size, the scale of different things. And it's so important that you decide from the very get-go what it is you want to really project, okay? Because there's a lot of different things that you can portray by taking that same dress and then putting different types of accessories with it, because that's why some people have dresses and attire that forms the basis of their wardrobe, or they always look good in black, or they always look good in this particular cut of a dress or a suit or something like that. It just brings out really the very best of them. So anyway, that gives a little bit of an overview of the 12 different aspects that I go through that compose the process of design from the very beginning of concept to the final completion, and how to get from point A to point B in an unerring, laser-like fashion so that we going through and the end result is that we hit the target exactly. And of course, there will probably be a little bit of differentiation and changes and things of that to be accommodated in that process. But again, once you have the main concept in line, it keeps you in line and on track and on target so much easier. It's kind of, I don't want to say it functions like autopilot or like cruise control, but it sure does make the journey a lot more comfortable. We don't really go by particular trends that are current at any particular point in time, mainly because people themselves don't actually change their personality in trends and cycles, so to speak. Their clothing may change and whatnot, but the environmental context, which incorporates a fairly large amount of money over time, that's important to synchronize that with the individual and their personality and the uniqueness of their personality. So we would rather focus on an individual and do proper discovery work, if you could say, ask the right questions to get the right answers and deliver the right results. So it's very important that we invest the client's money properly and wisely. Would never have subscribed to the idea of spending a person's money, would rather invest it and therefore deliver to them more of what they would like to see, even if they don't know what it is they would like to see. Many people don't really think too much in depth about interiors. Someone may say, well, I want to look like such and such a way, or I want to feel cozy and comfortable. Well, an obvious question to ask in response to that would be, well, what does cozy and comfortable mean to you? How would you describe it? And very oftentimes a client won't really be able to put their finger on what it is that denotes cozy and comfortable for them. So then we need to dig in a little bit deeper and find out what that really means in terms of feeling, ambiance, and help them to understand that we're delivering a whole orchestrated interior environment. So we want it to be very intellectually stimulating, emotionally fulfilling, aesthetically pleasing, all of that. By asking them the right questions, we get into a lot deeper than what they even themselves would imagine. Or we get a lot of times the comment, well, I've never really thought about it that deeply. Well, now's the time to think about it that deeply when you have a lot of money that gets invested into an environment. And that really doesn't matter what the budget is. If somebody's spending a few $1,000s or they're spending a couple $100,000, it really doesn't matter. The same principles apply in either situation. And so I really perform more like the philosophy of maybe an attorney, a doctor. We want to ask the right questions and basically figure out what it is they're after and create really a mission statement about what it is that they might want to do. That's the guiding principle or the yardstick by which to measure every decision that gets made. And there are many of them, hundreds sometimes. And so it eliminates what I would call the fluff. We get that out of the way right away, and we get down to the essence of what the people really want. And the idea is to deliver to them something that they have not experienced before. In my particular line of work, I find it myself especially blessed that I can see something done before it's done. In other words, at any step of the design process, whether it's talking to people, whether it's sketching, drawing, space planning, drawing up plans, or whatever the case happens to be, or material selection, it's easy for me to project myself into that space. It's easy for me to use analogies and word pictures and things of that nature to describe to the individual what it is we're going to see and experience. Because many people, quite honestly, they don't have the visual capacity to see it done before it's done. Well, in my case, I feel highly blessed that I can perceive that in what I would call 3D sense surround. People have heard about surround sound. Well, this is 3D visual sense surround. So I'm able to deliver exactly what we have set out in our quote-unquote mission statement as to what it is we want to accomplish. Well, that actually brings a lot of not only substance, but also comfort to the individual that they are in good hands. So that's incredibly important. A lot of times people will come in and look at my website and maybe they won't see exactly the look that they're after. Well, that's okay. We prefer to have people come in with an open mind because we don't deliver a look, or we're not known for a look per se. What we are known for is being a personal tailor, so to speak, and delivering exactly what the client needs. Not trying to follow someone else's idea of what they should have, not following something that they've seen in a magazine or a book per se that doesn't translate exactly to the home that they have or their personality. We would rather, as a personal tailor, so to speak, take personal measurements or ask the personal questions that bring out the essence of the individual so that they are perceived as a client who has a one-of-a-kind environment. Again, many trends, color schemes, they come and go, but you don't want to be stuck in a time warp. There's so much to a person that a lot of times they themselves don't even know that we'd like to bring out, so that it incorporates a lot of nuance that we can address and create that one-of-a-kind look. I mean, who wouldn't want, let's say especially women, who wouldn't want like Giorgio Armani to design a special dress just for them? Most people don't have that opportunity. But the philosophy, the mindset that is utilized in a situation like that with fashion easily translates into our situation here, and that's what we employ. So it's kind of like an expert archer. When you have that mission statement, so to speak, you have in advance set up the target. And once you've set up the target, if you're skillful enough, then you can hit the bullseye. And that's the important element of design. So why waste money? Let's invest the money properly. Or let's set people up for success. Even if the project requires a time of execution, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even 10 years. It doesn't matter as long as that is in place and the master plan is there. And of course it can take subtle variations and whatnot and changes as a project develops or more money becomes available, or a host of different things can interact with that. But the guiding principle is there. It's kind of like going from Michigan to New York. I mean, you're going to go to New York or New York City, and you might take a couple little side trips on your way there, but the idea is you're going to New York City, and that's the end result of what you want. So there's a lot of things that we do in terms of personal interactions with the client. And in other cases, we'll also put on design seminars, anywhere from an hour to 3 hours long, that go through all the phases and all the procedures of what good design entails in terms of a process, so that people understand that there is rhyme and reason to what we do. It's just like a person writing a wonderful piece of music that is a hit, and it's a hit for years and years to come, based on principles of music and rhythm and structure and point and counterpoint and interest and flavor and ambiance. So I like to keep harping on the ambiance situation, because another analogy would be, what would a movie be? Let's say an iconic movie like Dances with Wolves. What would that be without the orchestral score or the musical score that underscores different elements of the movie, different emotional contexts? So that's incredibly important to do that properly. Also, a lot of people look at design and maybe don't do a floor plan. Well, most places, in most situations, you need to have a floor plan. It helps you to analyze the situation. I'm a professional. I can see it done before it's done, but I don't do a lot of work without a floor plan, any more than a CPA would give you advice on what to do with your personal finances if they don't see what you have and what you have invested, or even a business, their profit and loss statement, your balance sheet. How can they give you good advice unless they see that? In addition to that, there's a lot of homes that are not properly lit. And new homes, a lot of times, don't have any sort of lighting plan at all. They're designed, but no thought has been given to lighting. How are we going to light a 2-story space? It's not going to be with torchères, and it's not going to be with table lamps. So that aspect of lighting is critical. Matter of fact, color is not inherent in any object. color is inherent in the light. And that's why when you select finishes, like a lot of people do, let's say a carpet store for example, they will go and select carpet under what is typically cool white fluorescent bulbs. Maybe sometimes they're color corrected. They'll get them home and they'll look totally different. Well, it's because of the light. You're seeing it under different lighting conditions. And people look different under incandescent, in sunlight, candlelight, the whole thing. So that's an important element. A lot of what we do, a lot of what I do is help instruct people as we go through the processes of design. So I've always believed that an educated client is a better client. And they're also more fun. And it's just like if I was Andre Agassi, you were just a beginner in tennis, I could just say, okay, let's go play. And you could get incredibly frustrated because every time I hit over the net, it never comes back to me. And at that point, you may say, geez, I give up. But if I were Andre Agassi and I said, hey, wait, let's do this. Why don't I give you a couple lessons and then kind of narrow the gap between you and me, then we'll play after that. Well, that person does that, takes a few lessons, finds that they can connect the ball in the sweet spot of the racket, it zips over the net, and they say, wow, this is pretty exciting. I think I could really get into this. Well, now you've enhanced that whole situation by teaching people at the same time. And you also bless the individual, too, by doing that. So they become more knowledgeable and gain a greater appreciation for what the design process is all about. So in retrospect, there's a lot here, more than meets the eye. If you don't necessarily find what you're looking for in terms of the look that's embodied in the photographs and whatnot, don't worry. We just haven't worked with you yet. And that's the whole situation. That's why we're so individualistic about what we do. And we treat everybody as an individual, regardless of anything that's going on in the world. Yes, there are influences and things of that nature. No doubt about it. And people like to incorporate that as well. But let's just remember that things cycle, things go through fads, they go through trends, and let's have something that is enduring. Like a good piece of music, like a good piece of architecture, like a good piece of sculpture or art. Let's do that, because that is going to be a lot better for you. And also, when it's done that way, it can move with the changing of time and the changing of seasons and the changing of individuals' personality. So that's incredibly important. So again, all the contact information is here on the website, so I definitely encourage you to look more in depth. And if you have any questions, by all means, give me a shout, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you. Have a great day.